Hey guys, it's Mary and welcome back to Study Journey. Welcome back to the Python series. In the previous episodes, we've all done basically Python problems from the MIT OpenCourseWare Problems. But right now we're going to be taking a little break from that and starting the Recursion Series. This is a really important concept in computing, and we're going to be talking about what recursion is, some sorting problems that is also really important, but we're going to be using recursion in them. And this is really important for the next problem set for the MIT problems, so we're going to learn this before we start on problem set 4. And so in today's episode, we're going to be talking about what recursion is and some practice problems. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about what recursion is, a few examples, and then we're going to do a practice problem. So first of all, what is recursion? So recursion occurs when a function calls itself directly or indirectly. It is a method of solving a computational problem where the solution depends on solutions to smaller instances of the same problem. So basically, like this diagram over here is recursion, and it uses itself over and over again. That is what recursion is. So in programming, let's look at an example. So for example, if we have a function recursion, and if x is equal to 0, then we return true. Otherwise, we're going to call recursion with x minus 1. So as we can see, this function is being called again by itself. So we defined recursion, but we're using recursion within it. Here's another example. So we have a function right here, and if n is greater than 0, then we do something. So, and it says that the last statement in the function is going to be function n minus 1. So as we can see, it is using itself within it, and that is when you know we're using recursion. So now let's try a practice problem. So the practice problem, it says to write factorial of a number using recursion, and it tells you that the factorial is the product of all positive integers less than or equal to a given positive integer and denoted by that integer and an exclamation point. For example, factorial of 7 is written as 7 exclamation point, and it means 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So if it was a number n, then it would be n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 all the way down to 1. So how we can write this, I'm going to use programiz.com, which is just a Python compiler that we can print, like write program on. So first of all, let's define a function. So I'm going to call this function factorial because that's what we're trying to do. And it's going to take in a number. So for this, as we can see, if it's a factorial, it's going to be multiplication of everything down to 1. So if it's 1, then we're just going to return that number because 1 factorial is itself. So if n turns to 1, then we're going to return n. Otherwise, we're going to actually program the factorial, which is n times n minus 1, etc. So otherwise, we're going to be returning n times n minus 1 and all the way down. So what is this? Well, that is also the definition of factorial. So we're just going to multiply it back factorial of n minus 1. Because what this means is, for example, if the number was 3, if n was 3, we can see that n is not equal to 1, so we're going to run this. And so it's going to be 3 times 2. And then we're going to run it through again. And factorial of 2 is going to be 2 times 1. And then we run it through again. As we can see, it is 1. And then we're just going to return n. And so it's going to be 3 times 2 times 1. So let's do an example problem. So let's let a number be, for example, 7. Now we're going to actually do factorial. So as we can see, the definition for factorial, it says the product of all positive integers less than or equal to a given positive integer. So this number cannot be negative. So we have to make sure that the number is not negative first. So if number is less than 0, then we can just print out like sorry, factorial does not exist for negative numbers or something like that. But otherwise, so if the number is equal to 0, we can print the factorial of 0 is 1. It is a rule in math that the factorial of 0 is 1. So I'm just going to say the factorial of 0 is 1. And then otherwise, so else, all the other cases is going to be the factorial. So the factorial of whatever that number was, so the number is the factorial of that number. And this is what it should print. So we already defined that the number is 7 right here. So the answer should be 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So let's pull out a calculator and actually try that. So what is 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1? Well, the answer should be 5040. So when we run this, the answer should print out the factorial of 7 is 5040. So let's run it and see if it works. It says the factorial of 7 is 5040. Okay, that is good. So this is, and so our code is right. So basically, this is what recursion is. When we call the function that we defined within that function. And so in today's episode, we actually learned what recursion is.